everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video review, and this will be a review of the Season 3 premiere of Superman and Lois. Now there will be spoilers throughout, so just beware when going into this overall video, and you can check out my reviews of the previous 2 seasons of the series, and I'll leave some links within the description. So just then, to quickly recap on the final events of Season 2, where we saw Superman and the others deal with the crisis threat of Alice and the other universe. We saw John Diggle making Irons aware of the threat of Bruno Mannheim. Tal-Rel moves to the alternate Smallville universe, and we had the final scene of Clark creating a new fortress for him and his family. Now in terms of this opener for Season 3, I think it was a solid premiere. It was less focused on action and spectacle and much more about catching up with these characters and their relationships. There was nothing too noteworthy in terms of big revelations, but the episode moved at a nice pace, and with quite the expansive cast of characters now, it has the same challenge as with Season 2, where it will have to make sure that everybody remains relevant throughout the overall story. In terms of the main episode, we had the plot of a potential pregnancy for Lois, before the doctor later on confirmed that she wasn't pregnant, but there are still some issues. So we'll see how that plays out, especially when we know previously that she had a miscarriage before. There was some tension between Sam and John, as when Sam took Natalie to the cinema on a night out, he tried to encourage her to join the DoD Academy instead of joining college, and she felt that Sam was exploiting her instead of genuinely wanting to spend time with her. We see that Lana finally comes around to handing Carl the divorce papers, turning up at his apartment just as he had a predictable one-night stand with Chrissy. We quickly note on a recasting of Jonathan, now played by actor Michael Bishop, and to be honest, Jonathan didn't really feature much without this episode, minus getting a hectic driving lesson from Lois, so we'll have to see later on throughout the season whether the actor is a suitable replacement. To be honest, it's probably time now that we see Jonathan start to develop some powers, as he's the least interesting of the 2 brothers, and when we focus on Jordan, we continually see him struggle with the responsibility of having powers and making the right choices. We did have that scene where, after being told by Clark to fly straight back to Metropolis after training, he takes a detour to Malaysia where he tries to save the lives of people from a broken crane, but he ends up making a mess of it and Superman has to swoop down to rescue him. So again, he received a love and lecture from Clark. So I'm sure we'll continue to see Jordan clashing with Clark about how much involved he should be in terms of the hero saving business, and hopefully they develop that conflict even further. We did have that later scene where, after the birthday celebration at the farm, Jordan hears Superman fighting far away, but he decides to stay at the party with Susan. So again, he'll likely have the same choice to face later on in a far more crucial scenario later on down the line. We do eventually talk about the superhero stuff, and Superman encounters a villain known as Henry Miller. And I have to admit, I completely forgot about this character. I believe he was the character who we saw in the flashback storylines of Season 1, where we were focusing on how Superman and Lois met for the first time. And we see now that he's acquired superpowers, adopting the identity of Atoman. I believe this is an iteration of a comic book character. And we do get a suitably large-scale battle within Metropolis. Very good straight away that they established Superman looking to take the battle away from civilians. That's necessary, of course. And we did have reasonably good effects for what you could expect from a television show. It would have been nice to have a bit more fight choreography rather than just 2 people crashing into buildings all the time. But nonetheless, there was a certain excitement throughout this particular sequence. Now we did see in the later scenes of this battle that Miller is taken away after presumably being shot, but then Clark performs some x-ray vision to see that no bullets were being used. And then he comes across a mysterious figure who's all cloaked out in black with a mask with rings on their face. Now when researching this, we learn that this is a villain known as Onomatopoeia, a comic book character created back in 2002 by Kevin Smith, I believe, and he's primarily more of a Green Arrow villain. And this bothered me a little bit because, first of all, I didn't feel that his reveal really made too much of an impression. I never felt that this is somebody that could really threaten Superman, but maybe that'll be developed later on throughout the season. And I also asked the question, why we're using Green Arrow villains? I know for sure that Superman has a sizable amount of rogues to choose from, and we shouldn't have to cherry pick villains from the likes of Green Arrow for a Superman series. Now this is probably due to budget constraints, as the main superpower of this villain seems to be the ability to transmit sounds, so in many ways it can distract Superman from thinking there are people in danger when there aren't. So the writers are going to have to really do a good job in developing this villain and making sure that he can have a sustained threat to Superman. It's still early days, but I do hope that we see better antagonists later on down the line, hopefully from the Superman lore. Now we did get the reveal at the end of a more famous villain of Bruno Mannheim, who originally in the comics was the boss of the infamous organisation known as Intergang. Now I knew him primarily more from the 90s Superman animated series, and it looks like this version will be much more in charge of the cloning experiments that they hinted to regarding Henry Miller. So we look forward to hopefully far more substantial developments with this character. We do have to be wary that the show has done in previous seasons very much of a switcheroo, thinking that we're going to have a villain of a certain type and then switching it halfway around. If you remember when we first saw John Irons, we thought this was going to be a race-swapped Lex Luthor. And in the second season, when we had the first initial reveal, we thought we were going to see Doomsday because we had that iconic armoured costume, before later on it was revealed to be Bizarro. So don't be surprised if we get a few twists and turns this time around as to who the eventual villain will be. Now, just in case anybody didn't know, we did have the recent news that Lex Luthor will be appearing this season. The role this time will be played by actor Michael Chidlitz. If you remember, he played Abraham in The Walking Dead. Now, I do have to be honest, I'm kind of sick and tired of seeing Lex Luthor all the time. We've seen him, of course, in the Supergirl series, and most recently we saw him in Titans, of course, in a much more reduced capacity. Now, whilst I could appreciate that he could be probably the most iconic Superman villain, but I also believe that he is probably the most overused. And I think at this stage where we've had multiple iterations of other characters, especially from the source material, we should be really tapping into other rogues that could be used in terms of the Superman mythos. Is this a sign that season 3 could be the last? That's why they're going for the most iconic villain. We've known television series to do this in the past. When they've known they're coming to an end, they kind of come out swinging and use all of the biggest villains for their potential final season. And I only say that, of course, because of the recent cancellations in terms of the Arrowverse show. As we all know now, the last one standing are indeed The Flash, which comes to the end this year. I think there's around 11 episodes left, and Superman and Lois. So again, there's that big question mark as to whether this will be the final season of the series, and perhaps that's the reason why they're bringing Lex Luthor to this overall season. So overall, in terms of this episode, it was a sound opening for the show. This is a series which I believe has been a very strong iteration of Superman in modern day times. I still love the characterization of Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. I think it's far more close to the nature of the character than what we saw with the Zack Snyder version. I love all of the chemistry between both Tyler Hoechlin and Bitsy Tulloch, who I think is a really good, strong Lois Lane. And I think for the most part, the show gets the tone right in overall building the overall stakes and tension throughout its overall stories. So hopefully season 3 can build on a good form of consistency shown from the previous 2 seasons, and who knows, if it proves to be an absolute blast in terms of the ratings, maybe, just maybe, it might be enough to convince David Zaslav to give Superman and Lois one more season before we get the next iteration, which will be helmed, of course, by James Gunn. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings and review of the season 3 opener of Superman and Lois. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this has got good signs of being the best season yet of the show? Do you think this will indeed be the last series within the show itself? Or do you think there's still potential, if it indeed manages to generate strong ratings, that we could somehow get a season 4 and maybe even possibly a season 5? Is it even possible that Warner Brothers will have 2 Superman iterations running concurrently at the same time in terms of this and the movie version that we'll see in Superman Legacy? I very much doubt that, but we'll wait and see overall as to what happens. And as usual with these series, I will of course provide reviews of any episode standouts, and of course a review of the finale and the season overall as a whole. So look up for that in the future, and you can check out reviews of many other shows within the Arrowverse on my channel, and once again I'll leave some links within the description. And if you have any other suggestions regarding any other movies, television shows, any other issues within the pop culture and entertainment that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.